Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when first we practice to deceive. Welcome to my third-part series on how to write murder mysteries. And this part is all about deception. It is about lying, ruses, the red herrings, and what I refer to as the cornerstone. So all forms of deception must relate to the crime. And they either are Chekhov's gun or what I refer to as reader's gun. Now, the Chekhov's gun is for the detective. He's the one who sees it. He's the one who fires it. This is before the ending, before he reveals everything. You can't have a Chekhov's gun at the ending. That sort of, the reveal has everything in it. So don't think of it in terms of that. The reader gun, also referred to as fridge brilliance, is what the audience is doing in their heads as per the detective firing his own Chekhov's gun. So we're looking at him going, oh, okay, I see that thing that he pointed out. Aha, and now he's making another observation or another deduction. And that's from deception. That's from lies and ruses. So we're going to go through the first three kinds of lies there are. Now, the first one is called fabrication. Now, fabrication lies is where everything's a lie. Everything this person said was false. And there's two major kinds. There's minimal and there's exaggerated. I'm sure you can make a third case, but we're just dealing with the simplicity here. So the minimal lie, again, you don't know it's a lie until much later in the story, if at all, are primarily used to show the motive or the character of the person using them. So a minimal lie is like, did you do something? Yes. Were you there? No. That doesn't really reveal too much, so it might be too difficult to get that kind of character property from that person. So unless that's exactly what they are, they're very simple, they're very shy or whatever, great. An exaggerated one is much more flowery, much bigger. The person just keeps talking and talking and it's all bullshit, but you don't know that. So what you want to do with these kinds of lies eventually in the story is tell the reader they're a lie. And it's kind of like a gimme. It's like, this is so obvious they're lying because it's fabricated, it's huge, the exaggeration is so big, and like don't waste our time. Don't waste the audience's time with all this stuff that means nothing if you're just going to expound upon a character. That's good, but not for the purposes of the crime, especially if it's nonsense. So always tell the audience that this is a big waste of time, or this is a big pile of nonsense that reveals something about the character and then connects them up to the crime. Now, the cool thing about a fabrication lie is that it's sort of the basis for another series of a web of lies. So you can discover something weird about the character in their past, and then it might be something else, and then it might be something else on top of that. So there's all kinds of levels of detail that you can go into a character just with on a complete lie or a complete series of lies. The trick is, if you're going to spend so much time, you have to reveal that it's related to the crime itself. If not, you're really wasting everyone's time. So you have to be careful of how much exposition of dialogue you want to use and how much is just a character trait because character and motive are just one aspect or two aspects of a crime you have to figure out in your head. Now, the second kind of lie is referred to as a half-truth. Now, half-truths also come in two forms. There's a basic statement of fact, which is like a loaded sentence, which is great. It's also harder to figure out. And then there's two statements of fact. So a truth and a lie, and then a lie and a truth. Make it easy, first part, comma, second part, right? Now, the basic statement is the most interesting. And the two statements are the most literal. So you could have a statement like, all men must die. And you're like, what does that mean? What context? Is that part of a poem? Is it part of a clue? Is it a dying message? Was it, what's the significance of that? So you have to build up some lore behind these loaded words like that. The same with fabrication, though. You have to have some more explanation or exposition later on of what's going on. What is really happening here? And only expand upon the thing related to the crime, before, during, or after a crime. Setting up the crime, committing the crime, covering your tracks. That's what you want out of a half-truth. The way that it's done with a detective, you do two things. just with the fabrication, you prove it's false, and make it the lie. Just make it simple. If there's more to it, then expand upon the implication of what it actually means, what the truth is. That's pretty much what the point of the detective is, to put signs pointing to the right direction, but never actually telling you. So in some cases, yes, you will have to tell them this is a lie. If it's simple enough, if it's much more complicated, imply it. Have a deduction. Well, Bob couldn't have been carrying the dagger unless he got it from Jeff. Therefore, you have to figure out Bob wasn't the murderer, or wasn't carrying the dagger, at least in that respect. So those are what you want to do with half-truths. Imply things of where you should be looking. The third kind of lie is referred to as a lie by omission. This really isn't a lie in the literal sense. It's when a character reveals something which is the truth, but then they cut short and they stop. And it's sometimes related to characters that are completely honest, shy, serious, stringent, strict, the just personality order. They want to always be true. Children are like that. So those are rare. I'd say they're impossible to do. You can write that. It's not very interesting, but writing the person who's always truthful. What you want to do is someone who appears to be truthful and gives 90% of the truth and just stops. And that's where you want to get the story going. What more is there? And then the next chapter will fill that in, and the next chapter will keep going with that idea. So the most important are the half-truths, but you can certainly use lie by omissions by anyone, and they're because they're truths. You don't have to really prove they're truths. They're just something that you should keep in mind. So when everyone's lying, there's always a nugget of wisdom or nugget of truth there to be used by the audience. So when I was referring to Chekhov's gun and fridge brilliance, all of these lies that are built up that the detective addresses, he then fires. And by the firing, I mean he's either proving their lies, he is implying something else, like the truth, or he's doing his own deduction. So he's like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe that. You can do that depending on your detective. What you've created. Is he social? He'll keep talking to someone to get them to reveal. Is he empirical? He'll find some evidence to contradict the lie. Is he a character guy? Can he figure out the person's motives and what they were really trying to behave by an inconsistency? Sure, do it that way. And it's during these moments of observation and description that detective uses that you, the audience, should be figuring this stuff out as well. And if you're not doing that, if you, the writer, then read what you wrote and you're not going through those steps, then you're probably missing something, because you want the reader to connect with the detective, what he's saying and what you're thinking. So think of it like the detective is building up all these observations, all these deductions, and you are doing your own versions of that. And you're going, okay, maybe he's right. Yeah, okay. And he's pointing and you're thinking of other directions, and your brain is going all over the place. So you're not just reading these observations and conclusions, you're making your own. So it's very important that the audience or the writer, when he writes this stuff, actually reads it and goes, oh yeah, now I'm thinking about Bob not wearing boots because there was no boots on the scene of the crime. It was wet and there was mud and there's absolutely no footprint. So what's going on there? So you have to be thinking of how is that possible, and how someone could have gotten in the room and killed someone, that sort of thing. Lies are verbal forms of deception. Now we're going to talk about human behavior, or ruses. Now, ruses are any kind of behavior that is meant to obfuscate or destroy evidence or hide something. So you could have entire relationships happen throughout a story. It's just one big fake ruse. Like, this is my wife, we've been together forever, da-da-da. And at the reveal, it's like, nope, she's my sister, or no, she's a friend and she's an actor, and she was doing this to make sure no one knows who we are for whatever reason. So there's all kinds of scenarios in murder mysteries where there's ruses. They're very intricate ruses, like neurotic twitches to make you believe you're someone else. So, someone was practicing in the mirror how to look like someone. They put their fake hair on, they put their fake clothes on, and they appear to be someone's dead relative that was obscure and no one knew of, and then they come back. There's lots of ways you can do this. Walking, talking, not the words, but how. Yeah, so if you want some two good examples, I would say The Mysterious Affair at Styles and The Hollow. These are Agatha Christie stories. Do not consider Ruses in the context Murder on the Orient Express, because that is not, in my opinion, a very good murder mystery, because Poirot comes to the deduction that everyone's the murderer, when it could just as easily have been everyone's an accomplice except for one person, or everyone's an accessory to murder. Or maybe not everyone showed up in that cart at that night. Maybe not everyone stabbed 10, 12 times, or whatever it was. It was only one person, everyone else watched. So there's lots of details left out in that story that I did not like. That is, I mean, there's no way anyone in the audience could have figured that out that way, the way it happened. And that's why I don't really like it. And it's been thrown around over the years as being her best, but it's really not. So ruses are just human behavior that is deceptive. And again, use the same methods of detective implying something's not right. So character backstories, neurotic behavior, do they match? Yes or no? Why? Why not? Something's iffy. Never give the answer for human behavior, but show the inconsistency, if there is one. So what we've been talking about here is lying and ruses, so human behavior and human speech. And in detective fiction, there's a common term for that, and it's called the red herring. And that's a combination of everything that someone is lying about. So the murderer is always going to lie about their alibi, and they're either going to point at someone else or point at somewhere else that is totally obscure. A red herring twist is when we're led to somewhere, and that leads to a twist in the plot. Now, because in a murder mystery, the twists and plots aren't really a thing, because the plot is all over the place. We're trying to figure out what the plot is. What I want to do is, with a red herring twist, is called the red herring reveal of a cornerstone. Now, a cornerstone in the jigsaw puzzle term is literally the edge pieces that bound the puzzle so that you can understand it better. You know what comes next. You know where categories are for certain kinds of puzzle pieces. That's what you should be doing. So if you lead someone up the garden path, if the murderer is pointing you this way, what the detective must do or must discover is a cornerstone clue, either during that journey or at the end of the journey, to make it even more clear. Cornerstone clues happen in murder mysteries randomly, because as the author is writing, they're not thinking about all the various connections, and they'll talk about, oh, I should probably mention the red dress here, boom. And it's just this one sentence that doesn't seem significant. And the issue is that, oh, well, maybe if the reader was paying attention, they would notice. It's like, no, you have to point it out that this is significant. The problem is, how strongly do you point it out? So I say at the end of a red herring, of the garden path, right at the end. So to do that, let's think of it this way. Let's break down chapters by characters. So we have the intro, we have the ending. So that's chapter 1, chapter 7. There's 4 suspects. So each chapter, up to 5, so 2 to 5, are character analysis. You're really just expanding on the character, and they're giving you information, they're lying to you, and they're deceiving you, and they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And the 6th chapter would be where all the cornerstones are revealed or brought to light, so that you, the audience, says, okay, this is your last chance. You have to figure out what's going on before I tell you the answer. You can put the cornerstones throughout those chapters as they lead you up the garden path, their own garden paths, if they have them. But you don't have to have a chapter dedicated just to cornerstones. It would help. It would clarify things. I would like that. All the key pieces of evidence. And when I say cornerstones, think of it like all the clues are following these cornerstones and pointing in the right direction. And the garden paths are all pointing in a different direction. So you're actually eliminating those possibilities with those cornerstones, because the cornerstones have to be accurate. They have to fit. They have to decrease the scope of the mystery. That's what puzzle pieces, corner pieces do in jigsaws. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what you should be doing here. You should be looking at kinds of lies, how to use them, how to tell your audience properly, how to read with your audience, as long as they're thinking along those ways, how to provide character behavior that is fabricated, whether they're acting, whether they're performing, whether it's a big charade the entire time, and having the detective point that out, not literally, but implying what's going on, and provide those cornerstone pieces for the audience to really latch onto and go, aha, this is where I know I'm going the right way, because this makes sense and this clue reveals. So in my next piece, I'll be talking about something referred to as the clue matrix, where you, the writer, will then be able to plot out or chart out every single idea you've got, every single character, every single piece of evidence, lie, ruse, clue, and make it fit all within your story.